There we go. We're live, and welcome to another episode of A Podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted, and we have an exciting new-ish industry and a lot to unpack here today with Jehan, founder and CEO of New Frontier Esports. We got chatting for a minute just before jumping on here, and we had some great content, and I was like, we got to just dive in here. Although we've met quite a few times at different startup events local to Winnipeg and some other travel, I was really excited. We were texting last night and you're building up my energy too about today's episode. So thank you for hopping on. And I'll pass it over to you to tell a little bit more, start off your story, and then we'll dive into where we just left off.
Okay, so my name is Jehan Moorthy. I'm the founder and CEO of New Frontier Esports. And this company sort of came about as sort of really a passion project of mine that kind of grew into something much bigger. So during the pandemic, I was working in traditional sports and entertainment, and with sort of the loss of activity from a professional standpoint, I decided to kind of jump into my own thing. I noticed that a lot of people were at home anyway, playing video games, and I just thought there was also sort of a need for organization within esports. So originally, we just started out as an organization building out events, online tournaments and competition for sort of amateur level players. We opened up our tournaments to the public. We were drawing in a lot of sort of positive engagement from a variety of young people and young adults. We then branched into a couple of other business areas as we kind of grew and matured as a company. We were starting to put on events and tournaments on behalf of brands and corporations looking to kind of advance their brand presence within esports. So we moved into that first, and then we sort of started identifying talent and really kind of seeing who some of the best players were within our sort of region locally. Here in Winnipeg, and then really kind of across the prairies. So we sort of moved into sort of the talent management sort of realm within esports, which is one of the traditional sort of areas that most esports agencies kind of center their business ops around. So we were sort of signing sort of content creators, gaming creators, and anybody that really kind of leveraged the digital economy, creator economy through content, was sort of now a part of our family. And that was kind of one of the latter advancements of us as an organization. And then through sort of 2022 and 2023, we added in some new business operations within partnerships, since we draw a lot of our revenue from corporate support and sponsors. So that was sort of a newer division within New Frontier that we recently just opened up. And then lastly, we found a lot of success with advising sort of officials and government and agencies within government-funded agencies and so forth like that on how to kind of best understand this industry from an EDI, like an economic and development standpoint. So right now, like my team and I have been, going around North America, really connecting with tourism authorities and sports commissions and really kind of getting them on board with this idea of what esports could be and how they can leverage it for their own sort of purposes and intents. So actually, like last week, I was at the a summit in Toronto, which was centered around sort of esports, travel, tourism, and the whole kind of benefit of esports as a tourism product, and how it can really kind of be a great sort of financial benefactor to a local market through events and experiences that draw in sort of thousands of people from around the world. So that's kind of the summary of New Frontier. So we've been around now for about 3 years, 6 months. We're coming really close to year 4 now, which is really cool. The team is still very small. Like we have about 6 co-founders that sort of work operationally in a variety of different areas. We encompass sort of business development roles. We have in-house legal. We have a finance officer, biz dev officer, and then we're quite heavy into sort of gaming operations as well. So really, as an organization, like our purpose is to kind of be an organization that sees esports as an entertainment product. We want to keep sort of creating and building on what esports could be. So we have a couple of really cool and exciting announcements that I'll kind of talk to through this podcast. And I'll share about some of those highlights. But if you have any kind of questions or if you want to learn more about New Frontier, we're on all sort of social media platforms. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and I know Stephen, you'll kind of link those out at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. No, holy macro, you unpacked a lot on the intro. I love it. There's and I'll kind of come at it from like because I know just enough, I think, about your business when you've chatted at different things and kind of following your journey just to be dangerous about describing what you do. And I was even learning a little bit more every time we talk about this thing. And I think that, one of the interesting and maybe like things to chat about is how that could impact like an economy, because we compared it to how traditional like sports have run in the past in terms of like ads and other people coming in to invest in these events. Because what I've seen online from other things, and we didn't show this before, but kind of outside perspective on some of the stuff I've seen, like hockey arenas or other like sports arenas literally full of people gaming. And I assume that that's part of kind of what you're touching in today. And I don't know that to be the case for everything. That's just what I've been exposed to, like visually, for kind of bigger events like that. And I think it's awesome. It's really cool to see people have very different skill sets, and it's it's super neat to do that. But what would an event like that actually look like? Is that an accurate representation of what you're kind of like chatting through with these things? Is that, or is that kind of blowing up in a different part of the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like right now in the Canadian market, there are sort of very few sort of examples of events of that magnitude and size. A lot of those events are put on directly by the publishers of the games that put on the actual sort of franchise league events associated with their IP. So, those are realities that we hope to kind of build on and to, really push around Canada. So some of the markets that have really been home to esports before are sort of Vancouver and Toronto, and a little bit of Montreal as well. And, being in Winnipeg, we are like that market that's often overlooked. And, we have some really great potential here, especially because we have some really great venues that I think personally could be leveraged into potential home bases for esports. But yes, like we really kind of want to build on that kind of culture of esports as a spectator product, where you are paying for the experience of being a fan, watching your favorite players, watching your favorite teams, and supporting a culture that is very much fan orientated. So right now, as an organization still very much in its infancy, like that's kind of what our vision is. It's a build on the entertainment experience that a lot of people kind of have an inclination toward, and I'm glad that you have some sort of idea of what esports could be and is, and that's really exciting for me to hear sometimes outside of perspective. So I think right now, like what we're trying to do as an organization is to build on some of the validation that we've been seeing across some of these, effective examples of esports as a spectator product, and keep building on that, and to eventually line produce our own events and IP, and then to eventually go to a publisher and do our own RFP for the rights to holding and executing an event on their behalf.
Right. So that's awesome. And I think I'm going to come at this next one from like or just curious in terms of like when I'm seeing those like arenas and what people are playing, what kind of games, or and what, I'm sure that there's actually many varieties of games that do get played in there, but what are common, popular, what are the biggest events from someone from the outside in here for those kinds of games? Like, I don't even know where to start, actually. I know, like I said, just enough about certain games to be dangerous. Game a little bit, but it's not something I do every day myself, but I know other people do. They love it. They're great at it. I have a neighbor, I walk by his house when I'm walking my dog through his window. He's playing something with shooting stuff on it. I can make some assumptions about what that is, but I don't want to put words on your end of things here. So what are people usually playing like in these arena settings like that on a bigger scale? What kind of games?
So it really kind of depends on so there's so many games. Like it's just like sports. There are so many different sports that have their own sort of fan cultures like centered around them. But some of the biggest right now are Valorant, which is essentially just like a multiplayer sort of team-based shooter game. There's Counter-Strike, which is one of the most long-standing esports titles that there is presently. There's also Call of Duty, which is the biggest sort of spectator-based esports product that I'm really familiar with. A huge fan of that game. I was just out in Toronto, met up with the ownership group of the Toronto Ultra. So Toronto Ultra is the sort of our local Call of Duty League team. And then other games that are really kind of blowing up right now include sort of Rainbow Six, Apex Legends, and Rocket League. So those are three sort of games that I'm seeing kind of real growth in. We're seeing right now in Brazil, in the Brazilian market, there's a huge kind of opportunity right now for esports as a spectator product. Like we're seeing esports events in the huge soccer arenas, stadiums, sorry, which is that kind of shows the dedication and passion that is had around some of these games. So in terms of like locally in like Winnipeg and in Canada, like it really kind of just depends on the demographic that you're talking to, really. But mostly here we're seeing a real kind of support of Rocket League, which is essentially car soccer. It's sort of one of the most like age appropriate esports that there is right now. We're seeing a lot of like production in that sort of competitive scene, especially within the education sphere. The K-12 scene, the middle school and high school scene are really kind of absorbing Rocket League as like their form of like inter-varsity sport.
Great. What's Rocket League though? Just to verify.
So Rocket League, it's developed by Psyonix, and it's essentially it can be a solo game, a duo game, or trio or more game. But it's essentially you're playing soccer, but you control a cup, and you're trying to shoot the balls into opposite goals. It's something what I hear all the time is it's what the kids are into. So it has that sort of element of creativity and freedom. You can do some really cool things to try to score goals. It's kind of probably one of the most successful games that I'm seeing a lot of like fandom around.
Cool. That's what I was thinking was too. I don't know how I picked that up. Some kind of like probably watching it, seeing some kind of like ad maybe for it out there, but I have no real like tie to that right away. And I was just thinking the way that we were chatting about this right now, I feel like there's been, I'll call it like the evolution of the cell phone, almost kind of how, I don't know if this is a good parallel. This is the best that popped in my head here. But like you've seen, in our generation, I'll speak loosely to our demographic and stuff. We went from basically not having cell phones to like, the bricks that we used to have, the flip phone, and now we have basically small computers with amazing cameras on them that we walk around with today.
And some of those phones can now be like gaming hardware, right? There's a huge kind of rise.
Even better segue than where I was going with that.
So like some of the mobile gaming like hardware that you're seeing right now, like you've got sort of cell phones out there that are capable of playing like first person shooter games, and really kind of becoming a tool for the gamer. And mobile gaming is huge right now in Asia. And part of our kind of quest is to see how we can tap into some of that culture over here in Canada.
Yeah, I know. Like, and on that note too, it's like, but I think we went through, or kind of maybe like a couple years like older than me, or around my like where you're kind of like maybe we were just getting into like playing games in my mind in the basement or upstairs on the TV. Right. And it was like, don't play for that long. And I'm just making up parents' voices, or whatever. Like, what are you doing? And I think like the word there would be like, you can never make kind of something of this, but in modern day that's not the case anymore. You definitely can. There's
so I'll tell you
maybe segue.
But like yesterday I had sourced a friend a PlayStation 5 for his son, and I think my friend had kind of seen the PlayStation 5 as simply it's just going to add to the entertainment sort of toolkit that the house holds, right? And I was like talking to this kid who was probably in like grade 7 or 8, and was just letting them know that it's just like how this person how this kid has invested in sport. I was like, there are some games that I preloaded onto this PlayStation 5 that you can now focus your energy toward, and if you get really good at these games, there are high school leagues that you can take part in. And if you're gonna head into high school soon, you're gonna have an ability to join a club, a community, and a culture, and potentially take that really far. And I was like, as long keep focusing on school and your sports, but don't forget there's an esports component here where you can now leverage like how good you are at like Rocket League or NHL into potentially something significant. And so the lasting impression was like, whoa, like I can go to college for esports. And I'm like, yes, like you can go into competitive esports for colleges, not just here in Canada, in the US, in the UK, Australia, New Zealand. Like there's really kind of an opportunity here. And so, that is kind of what esports can be. And that's kind of what the power of gaming hardware can be. And, a part of my work that I do a lot of is having these kind of conversations with parents who kind of come to the table with a lot of, what I call sort of, miscalculated information. So they often to believe that the hardware that their child is playing, and dedicating a lot of time toward is really kind of not conducive to anything productive. And I, like to always lead from, case studies and examples of, like here's an example of an individual using esports to now build a net worth, to now focus on exploring the business side of esports. And what I've kind of seen traditionally within like this kind of sphere is that those who play the games, can be rewarded with all the accolades, build up sort of this sort of culture of support and fandom, and then they go into potentially exploring ownership of their own teams and building their own franchises. And there's a really great sort of organization out there called 100 Thieves, who are based out of LA. And I recommend anybody to kind of look up the story of how Nadeshot, which is the gamer tag of the CEO and founder of 100 Thieves, kind of took the organization from him being a pro gamer. This guy used to work at McDonald's, and he then took sort of 100 Thieves, his team, into sort of new heights. And now 100 Thieves is sort of one of the biggest sort of lifestyle brands in North America. 100 Thieves, most recently announced like a huge partnership with, I think it was a Polo Ralph Lauren on a clothing line. And I want to sort of educate folks on the fact that esports is fundamentally like a sporting business. It operates similarly to a sporting business or an entertainment product. And, supporting somebody who has a passion for this, like, shouldn't really kind of be disregarded. And, one of my biggest passions is supporting those who, have real kind of aspirations to get into this space. And, that's kind of, what I love about this industry. And that's why, I'm here every day, working hard to kind of build out this ecosystem.
I love that. It just reminds me, it's like you're right on the forefront of this thing. Like having those conversations about, I don't even know what other sports would have been, but things that have like, gone from not as popular to whatever heights that they're at, like today, different levels, different leagues starting up, just the way that you're talking, even like high school league, professional settings. It just sounds like I've heard the story like in some ways before almost. And It seemed like the results be big. I mean, like even like high school hockey wasn't that popular. I played high school hockey, but it wasn't really like, it was just starting to kind of like take off then. And to hear you just chat about league development and having that basically laid out ahead of time, it sounds like already is probably a pretty big step. Because people got other interests. Like it's like, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think right now, like we're seeing some great inroads into sort of amateur grassroots development, especially here in Canada. So I have to, plug this because it's like super important to me. But I'm now a part of Esports Canada, so I hold a position on their advisory council. So Esports Canada is essentially like your Tennis Canada or your Volleyball Canada. It's the national governing body that will regulate this industry, and it's doing sort of really like great work in the competitive space and in particular the education space. So the ambition for Esports Canada is to eventually build out sort of league systems and competitive opportunities for people in all levels of education, and to support teachers and sort of esports coordinators on campuses across Canada with the infrastructure they need to kind of grow the space for their kids. And I think that just in a couple of years, like we've seen even here locally in Winnipeg, like the Manitoba Schools Esports Association hosts 35 teams, which is like phenomenal. And that's just perhaps like in maybe 2 to 3 years.
That's so cool.
That is. And so I think that if more support is given to schools to show them that, there's a huge power behind this, and there's huge opportunity, and there's huge kind of parallels between, somebody being, having that alignment on like PC hardware and infrastructure, like that is going to lead to, inquiry and exploration of, do I explore science, tech, engineering, or math? Or like, how do I build video games? Like, how do I get into the esports business? It's going to lead to sort of people being inspired, especially sort of young adults. And so right now, I think, I'm really sort of bullish on, one day every high school and every middle school across Canada will be supported in the sense of having their own sort of esports lab where, there'll be kids practicing and training and trying to advance into sort of, professional esports in sort of, a shape and form. And, it's going to take a few years before I think esports will sort of solidify itself within, what I would kind of consider the mainstream. It's still very much on the periphery right now, but that's okay. And there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of work to be done from an education standpoint and an awareness standpoint, and then dealing with some of the misinformation that's out there about gaming being not really productive or it's not conducive to productivity. Those are kind of myths
Okay.
we just want to bust all the time.
Yeah. No. Wow. I mean, everyone's got a different passion thing that they want to chase down. Not everything's permanent either, as far as that. I played a bunch of different sports growing up, and like probably would have been more towards like hockey. But I mean, like if you really wanted to like crush or like was really successful in like lacrosse, and there's no reason that someone can't do one thing for a bit and then move into something very different. Like, I try to do something different now every couple of years. Like the triathlons this is more like physical. Game is probably not like my number one like thing, but just to complement, it could be done the same way.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
And I'm seeing right now, just even in like the high school space, like we talk to some kids who are great at some games, and they find affinity, and they're pretty good at some other games, and I think like that's amazing. Like they're able to transfer over some skills across platforms, and that can be quite helpful for them. Especially if they're trying to sort of scour for opportunities to take their esports to like new heights. Like they can now diversify sort of the opportunities ahead of them. And it's all like pretty exciting here. Like I'm really sort of passionate about what the pathway to professional esports could look like here in Canada, and it's going to take a lot of help and support. And I'm glad to be a part of like Esport Canada, that's trying to pioneer the way forward here.
No kidding, that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, like, well, we have the opportunity here with Winters of Winnipeg. It might be a really advantage. We might have a lot of really good. I mean, we already do, and I don't even know about it. But a lot of great athletes that in the winter, and there's not a lot to do in -40. Anyways, so this might kind of breed some super athletes out of here. We might have whatever we want to compare it to.
I think the other like really cool thing about esports is that it opens up a new level of participation for folks that traditionally might not identify with traditional sports or music, theatre, art, or film.
Yeah.
So that's been really exciting to talk to some educators and to hear about the students that are kind of engaging in esports. Traditionally, would have been some students that may have chosen to be left out of traditional kind of communities, and so I think right now, like the power of esports in the scholastic system is like phenomenal. Like it's leading to sort of new engagement and new participation, and ultimately, like yes, like I would love to think that for 6 months of the year, like schools will eventually have the capacity to breed like potential future athletes, through like giving them time and resources and the space to kind of grow, and all of that's like fantastic. But ultimately, like I think like there's nothing better than hearing about sort of student participation within schools where traditionally these students wouldn't have ever felt like they identified anywhere. So that's been really kind of the cool thing about the space.
No, totally. Is it this kind of gonna be like maybe a different style question? Sorry if I catch us off guard or whatever. But obviously there's like the specific like esports direction that we're looking at specifically here today. But when you look at the skill set that is developed with like these like kids or even adults in like this space. So what are some other like transferable like skills outside of just doing like the sports side of things? Like I have a couple things that popped into my head, but you might have some other like examples that fall into like call it like more traditional work or even like stuff that's like outside of there, because there has to be some stuff that I'm not even thinking of right now. I have a couple of things that are in my head, but
so like esports can be so broad. It can lead to so much sort of development in so many different sort of aspects of traditional career pathways, if I want to call it that. Like I'll start with like media and communications. Like so ultimately, a lot of individuals and participants to esports, you're broadcasting your stream. You are sharing your skills with the rest of the world. So we're seeing sort of a real affinity for young individuals and young adults to leverage the power of channels like Twitch to broadcast like who they are and push their personal brand out there to the masses. And so right now, like just from coming back from my trip to Toronto, where I actually got to visit the Red Bull Gaming Hub at Toronto Metropolitan University, I got to see that students who are engaged in their sort of esports activities are getting into traditional like show production, where they are now like learning traditional broadcasting and line producing and line production and editing and color correction, and making sure that there are no sort of like lag elements taking place, and enabling the loss, stopping the packet loss enablement that sometimes happens with broadcast. And then I heard that some of these individuals, through like being involved in esports, are now taking jobs with sort of Rogers and Bell and CVC and traditional like telecoms companies, because they now have skill sets in sort of visual production and broadcasting production, which they fundamentally learned through esports. So it was really like amazing to see that there were so many transferable skills in communications, and of course, getting into esports, like if you're in tournament organizing, you're building sort of like logistics skills. You're learning like admin skills. You're learning sort of like customer service skills, community building skills.
Totally.
We're seeing like people who tell us that even if they don't become like a esports pro, they've developed skills in other things that they have become proficient at. And it's amazing seeing kind of even today, like where some people who were once in esports like have gone based on sort of their prior sort of foundational knowledge in certain things. Like it's really cool. So like for me, for example, I've seen a lot of like individuals in my own business field kind of move out of the industry, and some of them have even now found opportunities within traditional academia, like teaching in entrepreneurship classes, leading seminars at technical schools, actually now like being able to advise within like tech companies, like they're now like project managers, so there's really kind of an infinite amount of opportunities that can kind of stem fundamentally like from like participation in esports.
I love that. Nailed it. I'm like mesmerized. I'm like taking this, and I'm like kind of so sweet, because it's totally right. I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of folks have this like a great opportunity too to play like at a junior or semi-professional level, whatever you want to call it, for I'll use hockey again, but it would be like hockey, golf, curling. Sister was really good at that over the years, on her end of things. And I mean, she was actually probably more professional than many folks get to in that particular sport. But there's so many things that stem off from that, right? Not everyone's gonna do that, and whether it be just time, energy, they have other passions outside of the sport too that drive them to work or family life, like down the road, like other things do occur, and you can't always be at that professional level. So that was a really great recap of kind of some other like avenues that can take place. I think that was great. A couple of those things were in my mind too. I was thinking like the broadcasting, because you're basically hosting, like you were saying too, like your own show when you are playing on the bigger stage, basically with folks. So that's pretty
absolutely. I've seen some incredible stuff from sort of people who have even helped and volunteered through some of the events we put on, and I've just been sort of amazed at some of the skill capacity that is being kind of produced and showcased in front of me. I've seen people who can man cameras, to people that can man like the broadcast station, and move between all of like the different sort of elements that you require for like an esports show. And I've seen sort of some really great phenomenal leadership being conducted by sort of these tournament organizers who have just been organizing events on their own campuses through high school, and they're now sort of showing up to the professional sphere, kind of now acting as like a show producer, like telling people and demanding sort of objectives to be met based on sort of like a linear progression, a pageantry of a show. And I've just been like, wow, like this is like, where did you learn these skills? Like, and it's simply from what esports kind of led them to, right? So it's sometimes like as a person even in the industry, I'm so amazed by like what I see and the skill set development that I'm firsthand like experiencing from predominantly young adults.
Yeah. No, that's all. And like something that we talked about before, I guess, going back right into like the side of esports specifically, there was just a tournament that we were talking before where there was like a huge monetary potential win. I don't know if that was split up or that was just like an individual person. We mentioned that, but let's maybe dive back into that side of things and understand like there is like some serious winnings that have, or in these tournaments that has occurred in the past year, and what that looks like. What was it called again?
Good segue into so this is the Gamers 8 festival, which is happening currently right now in Saudi Arabia. So the event's called Gamers 8 Land of Heroes, and the prize purse is 45 million. So that's actually split across a number of esports titles, and it's it's a really sort of great opportunity for many sort of teams and participants to engage in a tournament, which is actually held in like the Middle East, North Africa, like that region, the MENA region. So it's really fantastic to see sports kind of now like embraced within this sort of segment of the world, which is also embracing sort of different sports in different capacities. We saw like the Live Golf movement move out of Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia. So the Game Date Festival and sort of the sort of movement we're seeing in Saudi Arabia is kind of really kind of what I'm seeing. It's that Saudi Arabia is using its sort of crown corporation in purse to really invest in esports in the same way that they've been investing into like golf and F1 and other traditional sports like soccer, for example. So Saudi Arabia now is kind of will be essentially a new home and capital / hub for esports. And actually, it's sort of one of the factors behind why I'm still quite invested in wanting to grow more as a company and operator within sort of the professional esports scene. As we chat before this call, Stephen, there's a lot happening in esports right now. There's some who would argue that going down into the professional esports route is not the way forward. And then there's myself and my team who we're still being patient with it. We're making some advancements right now within the pro esports scene, so that eventually we can take on capabilities to eventually enter a tournament of that size and magnitude, and have a go at taking a share of that 45 million, or if the pot goes up next year and year after year, like I'm here for the long game, and I'm really curious to see like where pro esports will go, in particular in that sort of region of the world.
Totally, and like I guess when we're talking about like athletes like this too, alluding to this a little bit, I'm just gonna like dive in a little bit more about like they're signing contracts like other professional athletes would, right? So like if you're taking like if you're winning like this and your team is winning, there's basically like you mentioned like agency style energy, and that's maybe where you're at there, or you guys are helping these folks get there, and by doing so they've signed a contract with you. Is that kind of what, like how that would be?
So I kind of really refer like this form of esports to that traditional sports model, right? So we as here are acting as sort of a parental co that is the franchise owner, or will be soon to be, of one franchise, which we're looking to actually. So I guess I'll drop this now, but so New Frontier is in the process of acquiring a team within the esports space. It's called Lotus 8 Esports. It was a team kind of born out of Winnipeg. There's 65 athletes that play in a number of different esports titles, from Apex Legends to Rocket League to Halo to Call of Duty to Valorant. And I believe like the latest addition to Lotus 8 has been a Rainbow Six roster. So as sort of the parental co, we're going to be taking charge of the team and sending these players out to tournaments. We're going to be challenging for a lot of places, like within sort of established leagues and franchises. And I'm hopeful, I'm quite bullish on this, that Lotus 8 could potentially qualify to become a sort of a known franchise one day within the world of pro esports.
That's awesome. That's huge. Big drop as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure we were going to go there. I'm
here. I was going to drop it eventually, so I thought I'd do it around the 30. So,
oh my gosh!
So you can
the pressure now. Yeah.
Big drop.
That's awesome. No, I guess like there's tons of directions you can go within chatting about that too. Because is there like one league right now, or is this kind of everyone's kind of like, I guess like in a sense like building this out, so there will be like a league or a couple leagues that are all at a professional level, or does that already exist where there's like I'll just compare it to hockey, so sorry, but there's like the NHL or even the football, NFL. We got CFL in Canada here. Like, what does that dynamic look like? What are those things called for, a listener, someone who is maybe a gamer who already like knows all this stuff, or just looking to get into it? What are they like looking at when they are in that? Maybe it's more obvious, and I just have like no clue. And you're going to be like, Steve, it's obvious. Like, this is it, right? But what is that kind of hierarchy or look right now in the league?
So I'll just give you an example. So Apex Legends, huge esport title out there and huge game that people are really subscribing to. I kind of call it it's like a cross between Fortnite and Call of Duty, but more so, it has its own kind of perks and unique kind of quirks that make it like its own game. So they have the Apex Legends Global Series. It's called the ALGS, and in order to kind of get into that, you have to kind of it's based on sort of like a meritocracy system. So you're playing and performing to get to the point of getting to like a really high caliber. So Apex Legends kind of works in favor of amateur teams and semi-pro teams kind of playing within what we would call qualification events to eventually qualify to play within like the top tier like sort of league itself, composed of I believe 12 franchises. So with Lotus 8, so like their journey into sort of Apex Legends was really kind of through the pre-professional like qualification series. So they played for a number of months, and we had been sort of helping them and giving them a lot of guidance through how to kind of move to the next step there. So unfortunately this year, like things didn't pan out for Lotus 8. So, we're going to come back strong for next year so that we can then, hopefully, giant kill and take out one of the existing franchises in that sort of enclosed league.
Cool.
And that would be sort of, a avenue within esports, but there are so many different sort of esport leagues that are out there. So I referenced one earlier. So the Call of Duty League, which is owned by Activision Blizzard, which is, so everyone's probably familiar with COD or Call of Duty. Like if you're a kid that if you're somebody in your 20s right now or early 30s and you were in grade 9, you were playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and you were playing that on your Xbox 360. And Call of Duty today is still very much relevant. It's still very much like one of the biggest games that's out there that has huge fandom. So in order for us to potentially get into the Call of Duty space, like we would be trying to vie for like getting a spot in a professional league, but that's done through monetary transactions. So we would have to fundraise for the franchise fee to kind of get into the league. And that's something that we are kind of thinking about too. Call of Duty is a massive game, massive space, fans around the world. Today, I think this week, Call of Duty just announced a tournament finals, which is in London in the UK. So it's called the World of Warzone. So a lot of folks and a lot of listeners will be familiar with Warzone. So there's really a lot of potential there that we would love to explore. Another sort of huge game is Rocket League. So Rocket League has a championship series. Again, Rocket League, it's kind of split up across, since Rocket League is global, there's Rocket League markets in North America, the EU, I believe Asia, and Lotus 8 was doing really great work in the Rocket League Championship Series qualification sort of rounds to vie for really high placement. So this year with our teams, it's going to be a lot of building. We hope that potentially we could get into Apex Legends Global Series and the Rocket League Championship Series as two of our first kind of entry points into esports, and then from there we'll kind of see where it goes. As we grow, we're going to eventually start attracting more talent who will kind of see us as a viable sort of organization to join. So I'm really excited for kind of where things kind of pan out in our esports journey. And hopefully, we're in these leagues before 2026, and that's going to be sort of phenomenal for our growth as a company.
That's awesome. I have so many thoughts going on about probably more the marketing side of things or whatever. My brain works since we know each other, but I'm just one of the things. Are they going to get I don't know, what are they called, rookie cards and stuff?
Yes, that's a good question. So I know
kind of more traditional stuff on sports. You know what I mean?
There is a company that's out there that is actually working on the development of rookie cards and player cards and tradables and collectibles. And I know that work was being done kind of at the time frame of when NFTs were a thing. So there's nothing kind of tangible out there right now from a player card standpoint. But I hope that one day we'll get to a point where people will be ripping packs of cards and convenience stores, and we'll be hoping to draw your dream ultimate team within esports.
Why not?
Maybe
I don't know. I can just totally see that. Yeah, maybe we talk about after the show. We start doing it. I just think that'd be such a neat thing. Like I'm just like imagining, like we were talking before too, just development of this like league and doing different things like that just seems like such a other than amongst many things, but similar to, right? Where you have like that component to it. Yeah, especially if it's that big. If there's pots of obviously divided up out of like 45 million, that's nothing to.
That's probably the biggest out there, but some competitions in the leagues wouldn't be able to come close to that. So
right, that's okay. We'll reference that one.
Like it's crazy. Like as soon as like the industry found out that was what it was, it was just mind blowing, like mind melting. 45 million, like it's insane.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to chat like in like year or two from now and see like where that's gone.
Yeah, maybe it's like 100 million next year. Who knows?
Yeah, legit. Yeah, because that's how it would happen, right? Like they've had success there. That's only going to breed more folks to get interested in this space, or should, and more investment in, like you were talking about, in terms of like tourism budgets, different things like that, and people, frankly, the more like again, like a throwback, but more traditionally they were playing like alone, maybe online, making connections. I just noticed from my Call of Duty, I've never really been too involved in that side of things, but I know that there are people that have basically like made like long lasting friendships. I've seen like videos of them like meeting like after playing together or whatever for a long period of time, and it's like you're really like drawing these folks out of their like playing like solo, like along like with folks, but bringing them together and treating them like teams and athletes on that bigger scale where they're performing at a high level. So that that totally makes sense.
I think that's a good opportunity for me to talk about like the building that we're putting together and the space that we're creating. So
absolutely,
so I'll share a little bit about that right now. So like our team's been working on sort of this not so secretive project for about 2.5 years, but we've really kind of felt that there was a need in our local market to bring everybody who is a gamer and esports enthusiast together physically. It's been really tough for us in the last sort of several years to find space and place to kind of set up and create events and tournaments. Venue fees are really high. Internet costs can be like really exorbitant. And so with the development of our own space, like, we will be able to facilitate, bringing people together who, might have played online virtually in existing teams, but they had never really kind of met before. And, those stories are like, of people reuniting for the first time physically after years of playing, like that's like a common reality in this space. And even here in Winnipeg, we're located, like we hear stories about that all the time, like people who had just played in the same kind of squads or teams or trios and had just recently met up. And one of the biggest challenges for us, even with Lotus 8, is that in order for them to kind of take things to the next level, like we have to we have to invest in space for them to grow and to kind of be nurtured as a team.
Bring them together.
To plug the success of like how they've kind of come so far, just simply being kids and young adults like in their parents' basements who have kind of just decided to take their skill set to the next level. And in certain occasions it's like really hurt the team. Like we were in a tournament that was hosted by TELUS. That was back in March, and all 3 players in this tournament played at home. One of the players was playing at home, and then there was a power cut, and he eventually was sort of booted out of the game. And the trio had to end up playing as a duo, and we couldn't really find any concessions through the event organizers. But I think that once we have our space, like we prohibit like instances like that happening. Like if we have a power outage, at least we can defer to like backup auxiliary power, or really kind of figure out a sort of a solution like very quickly. So it's tough when you have players that are so far removed from one another. Like once that player was out, like we couldn't connect with him for a while. We really couldn't get a status report on where this person was. So a space is going to be key. It's also going to be really sort of useful for a lot of schools and teachers and esports coordinators who don't have access to the technology and the hardware and the space. So we hope to really kind of become a center point for a lot of our community at different levels of the esports sort of spectrum. We want our space to be leveraged by folks who are in the amateur space, all the way down to the schools who simply just need a space from 4 to 6 p.m. that can be sort of accessible for esports entertainment.
Totally. No, that's huge. I'm glad that you mentioned that in there. I know that you've been, working at that for some time. We talked about you getting in there, and I think that's a great comment. Was there anything else that we missed that we want to cover? That I'm just kind of like very open table, very natural flow.
Yeah, no, like
we covered lots. So I'm just like, yeah.
I feel as though like I really walk through a little bit about the industry. I know that like before the call we were talking about some of the issues that the industry faces overall. Like we
Right.
as an industry, esports has kind of experienced much of the hardship that a lot of other industries have sort of faced. We kind of briefly spoke about sort of this industry and some of the issues befalling cannabis operators right now. So esports really kind of is in a sense like similar to the cannabis industry. We've seen a loss in support through sort of like venture capital. We've seen in esports organizations simply sort of dissolve overnight, and it really kind of is due to the fact that esports has been a business sort of industry that has had like sort of slow growth. Revenue hasn't always been where investors have wanted it to be. Even like as a company, we've had to delve into sort of multiple different sort of revenue streams to kind of sort of take up as much market share as possible, but B, to also kind of be responsive to the fact that the market has kind of gone up and down, sometimes like not in our favor. So really kind of the challenges for me as a business operator here in Canada, our kind of conundrums kind of always sort of stem at the fact that our customers can change. We can be dealing with different sort of vendors who, do want to do business with us, but they might not just have the means to operate with us. So I've kind of had to ride some really sort of hard waves like through the last sort of 3.5 years. The good, the bad, and ugly. It's all part and parcel of entrepreneurship. So brought this on myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, kind of our next steps as an organization are to kind of keep exploring like the sustainability of esports that enable us to essentially commercialize. So yeah, like it's going to be like an ongoing challenge, and I think that I'm also very transparent about sort of challenges that this industry kind of goes through and faces. It's been really tough from the standpoint of also not really having a lot of like government support, or we haven't really been able to access like funding, and also as an organization, like we kind of have very traditional business models. We're not building like digital product, we're not building like software as a solution, we're not building a video game, we're not like exploring reality and virtual reality. We are simply like an entertainment outlet for esports, trying to sort of build infrastructure for esports and to commercialize esports. So we've kind of like faced a lot of challenges from the lack of government recognition. We haven't been able to receive any grants or funding through sort of like traditional supports for businesses. So it's been challenging. And to use the cannabis parallel, like unfortunately, there's just been a lot of operators who have left esports just because of the fact that they were like, we probably might not be able to predict like how long we can last in this industry. Esports is really kind of probably one of the business industries that I wouldn't encourage anybody to go into if it's their first business. Like I've learned this. So if you're planning on going into the esports business, like after hearing this and it's your best business, like I would re-listen to this. Contact me, get some advice. It's tough. Like the one thing that people always tell you when you start a business is that you should know who your customer is and who your clients are. And with us, it's constantly evolving. We recently learned that working with sports commissions and tourism authorities and ECDEV agencies became a potential client market for us to start canvassing. But we learned that in sort of year 3.5. We learned that potentially putting on tournaments for corporations and brands, was an opportunity, but we didn't learn that until year 2. So there's always kind of there's a lot of learning to be done. This industry is going to have like way more ups and downs. Potentially as an organization, we might sort of scale down. We might just focus on maybe just the professional esports outlet. Maybe that angle is where we kind of focus all our eggs in our sort of metaphorical basket. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, it's just a bit.
No, that's all good.
A tough gig, and a lot of people always tell me that they hear sort of facts and stats about sort of consumerism in esports, and I always think to myself that that's great. Like, it's great to hear that more people in 2019 watched like the League of Legends finals than they did like the NBA finals that year. But that unfortunately doesn't always translate to operators like me within esports, because we aren't at that point yet where we are accessing sort of that capacity of viewership. Even with the events that we put on, like we're not sort of getting like sort of thousands of viewers or participants. We're still very much like growing our own space right now. So we're ironically like growing our customer base as we grow. And that's tough, and that can be tough as a business operator. So head into if you love like sort of risk, low reward. But ultimately, like, everyone who's left in this space is here for, are super passionate about this industry and kind of see this industry going like a long way. And, likewise, like I'm here to kind of play the long game and build out this culture, so that one day you look at Canada and you think, wow, that's a nation that is esports, has the esports capacity, has the esports industries, like sort of operational. I kind of use South Korea as like a parallel. One day I hope that Canada can be like a South Korea of North America, in the sense that South Korea recognizes esports as a sport. They have existing sort of leagues and franchises for their own sort of esports titles, huge fandom. Esports sort of athletes get as much stardom as K-pop sort of musicians. So there's a whole kind of opportunity there that I really want to eventually have here in Canada. So it's a journey.
Awesome. Right? Well, no, I think that's like a perfect segue to even like circling back to the name of the company. You named it New Frontier Esports, and it seems like you are truly creating a new frontier of esports with your company.
The namesake of our company was based on the fact that this is like very much pioneering. This is very much like a new frontier, that we as an operator are even discovering like daily, like the limits and reaches of sports entertainment could be.
100%. I think that's awesome. I just want to say thanks so much for making time and being on the show here. We covered a ton today for the listener to take in, and there's a lot going on in the industry, a lot more than what I knew before for myself personally, and I'm excited to chat more about it with you offline as we go continue on our relationship and stuff. So just want to say thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for the listener for joining us as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Stephen. I'm looking forward to revisiting this and watching it later.
Me too.
And then if anyone wants to check out more, like, or learn more about New Frontier, you can even just give us a quick Google, New Frontier Esports and Entertainment. Learn more about what we're doing, follow us on social media, and also you can follow me on LinkedIn. So if you plug my name into LinkedIn, the search bar, I'm often on there just sharing and talking about this industry and all of the turmoil and the good, the highs and lows, mainly highs, some lows. But feel free to check me out and learn more about the space. I'd love to connect. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll make sure to include for listener here too. I know we listed it off before with Twitter and IG and the website itself being nfese.gg. For the website, that's the same with the Twitter handle. Instagram is at New Frontier Sport or New Frontier Esports, and other handles would be of similar nature when folks are looking you up. But we'll make sure to include that at the bottom here. So
the single handle across all social medias. Maybe we need to fix that. Maybe Stephen, you and I
can. We could try. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. We'll chat soon.
Okay. Take care, man.